What exactly is Intarsia and why is it having a big moment right now? This is what we're going to try and answer today. I'm going to talk about what it is, why you would choose to knit Intarsia versus another type of color work, and why it might have fallen out of love with some people and why it's coming back strong. First of all, let's talk about what it is. Intarsia is a type of color work. It is used to make shapes, and it is used generally to make very specific shapes, meaning if you're gonna have a piece that has a lot of repetition of small patterns that are one next to the other, like this one, for example. This is stranded knitting, or we can call it ferile, which is more regional, but still it's a type of stranded knitting. And in stranded knitting, what happens is we have these floats. So all across my sweater, I'm carrying this yarn across the back, making strands that are called floats, which is what stranded means, right? It's strands. Whereas when I'm talking about Intarsia, what happens is, I'm gonna show you the back of my sweater right now. I have two colors, but those colors don't carry across a garment. They are picked up and left off and picked back up on the way back. So it is used to make very sometimes geometric shapes within a project, or it can be used to do very specific graphics. Like, let's say I'm knitting a sweater and I want to put a big heart in the middle here. Then I wouldn't want to do stranded knitting because I would have to carry all that yarn across the entirety of my sweater in order to make this heart. So what I'm going to do is Intarsia, so I can knit to the heart, drop, knit the heart, drop, pick back up another strand and knit the rest. Those shapes in the middle of a sweater to me are very reminiscent of like ugly Christmas sweaters or kids sweaters, where they would be like a Pokemon or whatever in the center of a sweater. And I think those things might have kind of been very popular in the 70s, the 80s, and then it kind of stopped being popular for some reason. And that might be why Intarsia kind of was less popular for those years in hand knitting as well. Another reason why I think it was less popular is that Intarsia is a technique that is much easier to do flat. And at some point, I cannot tell you exactly when, but people started knitting garments in the round. And when people started knitting in the round, then it was very popular. Everybody was creating patterns in the round, and Intarsia in the round is doable. I did do this beautiful hat pattern, which is called the Vold from Jean-Philippe Clich. This hat is entirely knit in the round, even though it is an Intarsia. I'm gonna say it right at some point, okay? So this hat is knit in the round with an Intarsia motif, and it's actually really fun to do in the round, but it does mean that you're still knitting back and forth. I have no seams on this hat, but it was absolutely knitted back and forth using Intarsia. I believe it's a technique that was invented by Anne. Let's see what her name is, because she calls it the Intarsia method. Anne Burke, B-E-R-K, invented, I think, the Intarsia method, which creates this in the round knitting Intarsia. That being said, I think that people for a very long time, because knitting in the round was so new and popular and exciting, kind of stopped knitting garments flat, unless that's how they learned, and then maybe they never stopped knitting them flat. But even though people are still mostly interested in knitting garments in the round, I think there are less, let's call it, fear of knitting things in pieces and seaming it up, because we're noticing that some techniques are actually easier knitted flat, and it gives us more versatility when it comes to knitting techniques like Intarsia. So I'm seeing in the last few years, maybe the last 2 years, a very big influx of patterns that use Intarsia, and I love it. I'm just so in love with it. So this sweater is one, right? This one has been knitted. Obviously, the sleeves have no Intarsia, but the body, front and back, has a very simple Intarsia pattern, and it is knit flat from the bottom up. And as much as I'm not in love with the yarn that I used for this sweater, which was a kit by Wool and the Gang. I think the wool is absolutely super cozy and warm and soft, but it pills a lot, and it's lacking a lot of structure, which actually the seams are giving it a little bit more structure. So it's actually the perfect way to knit this yarn. I digress. So this is the Everywhere sweater by Wool and the Gang. It is a perfect introduction to Intarsia because it is very simple. There's just this one line of Intarsia that you have to knit. You might have seen this kind of video right here of people knitting Intarsia. And I think that's what scares people, because people imagine that when they are knitting Intarsia, they're gonna have to have all these million little bobbins or ends of yarn that they're gonna have to deal with. But you really truly only need one yarn per section. So if I go back to the heart idea that I had before, in a heart pattern, you would have in the center of the sweater, you would have 3 bobbins. This is 3 fingers. 3 bobbins. One for one side of the main color, one for the heart, and one for the other side of the main color, because you're not carrying this yarn across to the other side. Obviously, if you're knitting a pattern with bunch of squares or bunch of triangles or, bunch of colors in the same row, you're gonna have to have one bobbin or butterfly or ball per color. And people get all stressed out over the tangling and everything, but I really think that it's worth trying it out with 2 colors, see how you like it, to then, do a pattern that's a little bit more complex. So I pulled out a few patterns that have come out and I put them in a bundle. My bundle is ever growing because, like I say, I'm seeing more and more and more Intarsia patterns come out. But I will link that down below right there. All the patterns that I talk about today that have Intarsia are gonna be in that bundle. So please go check it out. Some are free, some are paying, some are in books, but all of them I think are gorgeous and wonderful. So if you're looking at this kind of sweater, Jacqueline Cieslak, I'm pretty sure that's not how they say their name, so I'm very sorry if that's the case, but there's the Moon Crush pullover and the Moon Crush vest that are just so beautiful because it's got this nice geometric, swirly, organic feel to it. And then there are things that are much more like straight. Something like the Color Quadrant Crop by James and Watts lets you play with colors in such a fun way. And the Kai Fella sweater by Knitwits and Yarns also has all these squares that were just, to me, they're so reminiscent of the 80s, and I think like everything comes back around, right? So there's a reason why Intarsia is coming back around. It's because obviously fashion is as well. But then you have use of Intarsia that is just so creative. If you go check out Anna Husman, I don't know. If you go see Anna's patterns, she has a plethora. I think it's really just her specialty, and she does it so well, where she sprinkles in a bunch of different shapes. It is so much fun. And hers are generally in garter stitch, which, let me show, This is my design. This is also a garter stitch Intarsia pattern, and it is much simpler. Like mine was meant for people that want to dip their toe in Intarsia and still, have the creative freedom to make lots of shapes, but not in a way that's very complicated. So this scarf is a modular construction where you knit one square. So this is a square that you knit with two colors, and then you knit the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and so on and so forth, and the scarf keeps growing. I absolutely love the scarf. It is garter stitch as well, and to be honest, some people dislike the backside of a Intarsia pattern, but to be honest, it does not bother me that much. I can see that there's a wrong side and a right side, but so is, a stranded color work has a wrong side and a right side. A mosaic pattern has a wrong side and a right side. So really, who cares? If you want to just dip your toes into some Intarsia, this could be a good one to start with. Also, there's a pattern by Naomi Endicott from Espace Tricot, which is called the Angular Sky Mitts, and that one is a free pattern where you again knit it flat and then seam it for fingerless mitts. Amazing pattern to just learn how to do Intarsia. But then the magic of this technique and people being so smart is that there are now so many patterns that are using a blend of Intarsia and regular knitting by combining yarns and dropping one of the yarns, picking up another one while still having a common thread. Let me explain that again. So if you go on Ravelry or in my list and you go see something like the ferrule, I'm just choosing patterns and names that I cannot pronounce today. Ridiculous. But anyway, it is a sweater that basically asks you to hold 3 yarns together pretty much at all times. And what happens is you're holding those 3 yarns for a certain number of stitches, then you drop one and pick up another, but that one that you just dropped stays there, right? And then you keep knitting, and then maybe you drop 1 or 2 or another, and then you just drop and pick up, but you always have one that's a kind of a common one that goes across. When you come back, you pick up the next one, you leave that one, etc. And to me, that creates so much texture as well as color play. And it is so much fun. And I had not seen that before much in other patterns. Maybe you have. If you have patterns that are similar to that idea, please drop all the names in the comment section, because I want to know like all of the Intarsia patterns. Another cool thing that I've seen with Intarsia is literally playing with the yarn weight. So there's a beautiful shawl by Julia Wilkins, the punked shawl that is in neons and neutrals, which is a mohair shawl, but within the mohair shawl there'll be just little dots and little spots of fingering weight, Intarsia. I just keep on saying it wrong. I'll say it how I say it, whatever. Intarsia geometric, little spots, and I think it's so much fun. There's so much we can do about it. And then when you want to get to the advanced level, you can go see what, first of all, Nancy Marchand does. She does some sort of Intarsia mixed with cable and other textural beauty in something like the Canal Poncho and Cowl. She also did one that was like a splotch kind of sweater. Nancy Marchand is just an absolute genius when it comes to creating new textures. And then there's also Florence Sperling, who's created many Intarsia patterns. Her most popular one is called the Scout Mini Shawl, and it is a mix of Intarsia and stranded. So each section of the shawl is actually stranded knitting but also Intarsia because it switches from one stranded section to a different one. So you have to change one or two colors at all times when you're switching sections, which is kind of a mind bending exercise, but the results are so beautiful. So beautiful. So I have my eye on all her next things. I saw her recently work on a stripy Intarsia project where the stripes are not all the same thickness. So it's stripes within stripes. And if you're a kind of person that likes to knit, simple stitches, but have a little bit of challenge in the way you play with color, that could be really fun because most Intarsia patterns are either stockinette stitch or garter stitch, which is knits and purls, no cabling, no crazy, stuff like that, but you can just have so much fun. I have socks, I have kids shirts, I have hats, scarves, sweaters, bunch of those things in this bundle there. Obviously, one person who has been a precursor to like fashion Intarsia is Cafe Facette. And I have Lady of the Lake there, which is an absolutely gorgeous sweater in Intarsia with lots of triangles. That one I would love to make one day. I really think it is such a statement piece. Will I ever make it? I don't know. It is definitely a lot of different ends to weave in and, having to deal with lots of colors. But maybe that's something on my to-do list for later. So I'd love to know if you have ever knitted Intarsia, if you like it, you dislike it, you didn't know it existed, you've been wanting to do it but you're scared. Let me know all your thoughts about it. And maybe if there's enough people really loving the Intarsia vibe these days, we could start some sort of knit along because I would love to get pushed to create more patterns with that technique. Thank you for watching. If you learned a little something, please subscribe and leave me a thumbs up, a comment, share with friends. Happy knitting. Bye.